Mesdames, Messieurs, bonjour. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning if you are joining us from France, and good afternoon if you are in the Manila time zone like myself. My name is Anna Austria-Lumé, and in behalf of my colleagues at Business France and at ADB, I would like to welcome you all to today's online event. Our virtual business opportunity seminar, Asian Development Bank, focus on health, circular economy, and sustainable infrastructures will begin shortly. We are excited to introduce to you our lineup of distinguished speakers for today and take this opportunity to thank them all for their time and their expertise. Ms. Anne Marchal, Ms. Camille Liu, Mr. Rustam Abdukayumov, Mr. Aaron Datta, Mr. Ray Liu, Mr. Michael White, and Mr. Stéphane Desadi. Before we kick off today's much-awaited presentations, may I please remind everyone to address your questions through the Q&A chat box at your disposal. My colleagues will either reply to your questions directly, or we shall address them all at the end of all the speakers' presentations today in order to keep the fluidity of our webinars flow. We thank you all for your kind cooperation. Lastly, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us should you wish to continue discussions with our experts after today's event. Let us now begin with today's welcoming remarks. To give an introduction on behalf of the Asian Development Bank, it is my pleasure to introduce today's first speaker, Ms. Anne Marchal, Director's Advisor for the Constituency Office of France, Belgium, Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Switzerland at ADB. And thank you for accepting to officially open today's VPOS. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Bonjour à tous. Good morning and good afternoon to all. This is a pleasure for me to welcome you today to this virtual business opportunity seminar dedicated to ADB's policy in the health sector. Still virtual, but hopefully the last one. Maybe we'll talk about that later. Over the past 2 years, ADB has been at the forefront of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic that has hit hard the Asia and the Pacific region. Let me give you the two main examples of ADB's quick reaction and response. First of all, early 2020, the bank committed $20 billion in assistance to the developing member countries of the region to quickly manage the economic, social, and health costs of the pandemic. The second quick action was at the end of 2020, where ADB launched the Asia-Pacific Vaccine Facility, APVAX, amounting to $9 billion to ensure the region gets access to affordable vaccines against the COVID-19. As the global context remains highly volatile, we have crises succeeding each other, the support to the health sectors remain crucial. And ADB's priority work in the health sector seeks to improve health infrastructure and systems, governance, workforce, and financing. And this is key to ensure that we have effective health system working in the DMC countries. To give you a few figures in terms of a financial commitment of ADB, as of the 30th of June 2022, financing for health represented 3% of ADB's commitment and is projected to be at 4% by year end. This is a major improvement compared to before the pandemic time. ADB committed to spend $7.3 billion on health, social protection, and education between 2022 and 2024. Again, this is a major commitment. On substance, ADB is working with governments on the expansion of universal health coverage systems, improvement of efficiency of health services, with a strong focus on mothers, children, and the elderly, to name a few examples of ADB policies action. More concretely, I will give you two examples of recent projects that have been adopted by the board to give you an idea of what ADB is financing in practice. On 2022 September, ADB adopted a $100 million support to Pakistan to strengthen the health system in the region of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, focusing here on the secondary regional health system. On the 23rd of September, ADB adopted a $100 million support to China to tackle the issue of aging society and develop age-friendly cities in the Wuzhou region. This project is particularly interesting because it combines support to health and urban development. This is an area that will also be discussed today, so I wanted to highlight this project to you. In all this context, French companies can play a major role in the transformation towards a green, resilient and sustainable economy, and particularly in the health sector, where they have a long track record in developing and operating new technologies, but also in other sectors where health feature can be embedded. So I believe today's business opportunity seminar will be an occasion for the French companies to gain understanding of ADB's action in the health sector, but also for ADB to learn about the French expertise, technology innovation, and how that could benefit to ADB's project. I would like to thank all the French companies present today in this seminar, my ADB colleagues for their time to interact with you, and Business France for the, as always, very good organization. And I wish you all a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much, and over to you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Anne. And now for the introductory remarks on behalf of Business France, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Camille Louillot, our health sector correspondent for Business France in the ASEAN Oceania region. Over to you, Camille.
Thank you very much, Anna, and bonjour à toutes et à tous. Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm very pleased to say a few words today on behalf of Business France. And first of all, let me say that we are grateful for the continuous close collaboration we share with the Asian Development Bank, and we are very pleased to have another chance to present relevant business opportunities for the French companies that we support and accompany across the region. So today's event is the fourth virtual business opportunity seminar that we are organizing with the ADB team, and the first time that we have chosen to focus on opportunities and priorities in the healthcare sector. And with growing needs and challenges to address within the region, such as the increasing prevalence of chronic diseases and the fast aging of its population, the French expertise, which is recognized worldwide, including in these specific areas, is without a doubt more relevant than ever for the region. And ADB continues to be a priority partner for Business France and French stakeholders in international development. French companies won a total of 114.51 million USD in ADB contracts in 2021, which is a 32% increase compared to 2020. And France is ranking 16th overall in awarded contracts, and we believe that France still has much more to contribute to ADB activities. So it is our hope that the established reputation of French firms in relevant sectors such as healthcare, water management, climate adaptation, and sustainable infrastructure, all contributing to the important development of a circular economy, will really pave the way for more fruitful collaborations in projects that improve the lives of populations in the Southeast Asian region and beyond, especially in this time of rebuilding and reopening post-COVID. So to the French companies with us today, rest reassured that Business France and the Team France Export remain at your service and continue to prioritize the promoting of your international development through our knowledge sharing partners such as the ADB and our rich network of Business France, Team France Export offices in Asia and across the world. So again, thank you very much to everyone for joining this session, and to the ADB colleagues who will contribute to it, and looking forward to the session. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Camille. Lastly, to give introductory remarks in behalf of PPFD, the department in charge of business opportunity events at ADB, please welcome Mr. Rustam Abdukayumov, Director, Procurement Division 2, Procurement, Portfolio and Financial Management Department, or PPFD, at the Asian Development Bank. Over to you, Rustam. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Anna, and bonjour to all our participants in France. It's really my pleasure to welcome you to this virtual business opportunity seminar. And we have quite a strong cooperation with Business France already, and we had similar events in the past, and I think we will continue our collaboration and we will have more events in the future. I would like to thank all our partners from Business France for organizing this event. I would also like to thank Anne Marshall and Camille Louillot for your opening remarks and support. So there is a lot we can do together. And as you know, for the last 2 years, we have been conducting these business opportunity seminars virtually, but now we see that the environment is changing. There are mostly all restrictions have been lifted and travel is possible. So we are looking forward to organizing in-person BOS. Of course, we will be in touch with our constituencies, and if there are requests for in-person BOS sometime next year, we will be ready to provide that. And we are actually considering organizing one big business opportunities event, whether it will be in Manila, similar to our traditional business opportunities fair, or maybe in some of our regional countries, somewhere in the region. Once we have decided on that, we will announce it on ADB website. So for our participants, if you visit ADB website and go to Work with Us tab, under that you can select the ADB Business Opportunities Outreach page. And once we have confirmed the venue, I mean the country and tentative agenda, we will place this announcement there. And closer to that event, of course, we'll provide a link for registration. And also today, taking this opportunity, I would like to announce another event which we are going to organize this month. It will be also large, still virtual, but large business outreach event open to participants from all countries. That will be held on 27-28 October. It will focus on the urban sector and the circular economy, similar to what we are going to cover today. And the overall topic will be addressing the future challenges of Asian cities. We will also announce about this event in the next few days, and there will be a link for registration. We are going to send a memo to the board of directors in the next couple of days with the same link, so that this could be shared with all potential participants. This is just to provide a kind of bigger platform for all interested parties to learn about ADB. We have done similar large business opportunities event last year. It's not focused on one particular country, but based on the feedback from our participants, we have decided to focus on urban topic, because this is where I think there is a great interest. So today we will be covering very important sectors, health, water, and urban. And we will also talk about procurement procedures and how to find business opportunities on ADB website. But I just wanted to make one point. Traditionally, transport and energy are the largest sectors in ADB portfolio. And if we compare the place the health sector occupied in 2020, it was number 7 in terms of annual spend on procurement. And it was behind urban and water. In 2021, it became number 3, right after transport and energy, with the annual spend of about $2 billion. It's a very kind of small difference with the energy sector, which was at number 2. The difference is only about 60 million. So energy is also 2 billion, 100 million, and health is just 2 billion, 40 million. So there is a very big increase, very big jump from about 450 million to 2 billion in just 1 year. Of course, that is partly justified by the COVID-19 vaccine procurement, but it's not only that. We see many other initiatives in the health sector, and Anne Marshall has provided some examples of health sector projects, and I think there are many more in the pipeline, and our colleagues will share that information. And also, it's quite relevant that urban and water sector, they are very closely interlinked with the health sector. So I think there will be quite a lot of useful information shared today. I just wanted to give some figures for our participants to understand the magnitude of opportunities available. So that figures are more or less stable, but we could say under borrower administered projects, we spent about 700 million annually on consulting services. This is where borrowers select consultants and administer. And on top of that, we have about 200 million spent on ADB administered consulting services. This is where ADB recruits consultants and basically manages these contracts. Of course, under ADB administered consulting, we have quite a big number of individual consultants, close to 3,000 every year, but there are about 250 contracts with firms. And this is where I think there is opportunity for many of our participants today. And if we compare the market of contractors and consultants, one thing we have noticed is for contractors, civil work contractors, they traditionally form joint ventures to participate in bidding because projects becoming more complex and they want to kind of strengthen their capacity, their expertise to win contracts. But we see the same trend in the consulting. Even large consulting firms, which used to submit bids just as a single entity, now they are trying to associate with other smaller firms and form a joint venture or consortium, and then they submit bids. This is because the project design requires many different skills, many different expertise to be provided. And you won't be surprised if there is one assignment which includes both health sector expertise and, for example, urban sector, right? So therefore, just to share with our participants, you should not hesitate to explore the market. Who could be your potential partners in submitting bids for consulting assignments? And of course, there are many other kind of areas where we are looking for more collaboration. I think Marshall also mentioned about that. We are looking for companies who can propose new innovative technologies or solutions in the project design and implementation. We have certain kind of knowledge on how this could be done, but the world is changing. And if there are some companies who can either offer technologies, some kind of equipment and some other things, tools that can be used, this is one part. But another part is innovation in terms of designing projects. So we would really much appreciate your feedback because it's a two-way communication. We are sharing all information about ADB, but we would also like to receive a feedback from consulting industry on how we can improve, because ultimately we will continue working together. So we would really appreciate your feedback on that. And of course, I hope you will receive quite a lot of useful information today. And I hope the main objective for some of you is not only to establish contacts, but also eventually to win contracts under ADB finance projects. And I hope you will be successful at least partly because you got some tips from today's seminar. So wishing you all the best. And thank you very much for your interest. And we'll hand over back to Anna. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rustam, for that very optimistic introductory remarks as we move forward. So now, without much further ado, let's begin today's main presentations. We'd like to start talking on we begin by talking about the crucial health sector priorities for ADB, beginning with our first speaker, Mr. Ray Liu, health specialist from the health sector group under the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department at ADB. His work at the bank focuses on strengthening the healthcare systems to deliver COVID-19 vaccines in the Asia and Pacific region, as well as supporting scaling up operations in the health sector. So today, Mr. Liu will talk to us about one of ADB's key priorities, especially following the pandemic, improving vaccine manufacturing and health sector group projects. Over to you, Ray. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Anna. Bonjour, Hadu. So yeah, I'm glad to share with you all today some ideas about a new business line of ADB to how do we support the immunization and the vaccine manufacturing in the Asia Pacific region. Next slide, please. Firstly, we just have undergone this COVID-19 pandemic, and which shows some strengths and also vulnerabilities of our systems. So, for example, we have seen up to today, the world's population, almost 70% have been vaccinated for COVID-19 vaccines. However, also bear in mind at the beginning of this campaign, there has been very unstable supply of high quality vaccines. And also, we also noted that it really needs to take a multi-sector or interconnected agencies working together to address multiple fronts for this COVID-19 vaccine campaign, such as vaccine surveillance, the cold chain management, equipment, human resources, and the risk communications. So in order to use this immunization tool to prepare for the next one, we better start ahead of time to prepare earlier for the next one. Next slide, please. So some areas that we can focus on. For example, for early warning system, how do we build laboratory systems? How do we use data sharing, etc. And also, we have learned that it really needs to take this whole of society approach and also emphasize the role of primary health care and the healthcare workforce to tackle the future stress. But one of them we really need to today to emphasize is this surgic capacity to prepare for the next pandemic through vaccination, through immunization. In order to such as including how can we have build this again early warning system and the vaccines, therapeutics, diagnostics, and also support the countries to build a stronger national regulator. Next slide, please. Immunization itself is a very important area. Again, even though it's a new line of business for ADB, but immunization contributes to 14 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It links to so many different areas like poverty, gender, health, etc. As you can see in the past, as records shows that the major part, a large part of the under 5 mortality reduction is attributable to immunization. Just by estimate, for the countries that have been introduced the HPV vaccines in the girls aged 13 to 19, it was estimated about 83% of the HPV-caused cancers will be avoidable in the coming 5 to 8 years. And also, this will the use of vaccination will help to reduce the use of antibiotics as a way to resolve to solve the problem for antimicrobial resistance in the future. So it was estimated in the low and also low middle income countries, the return to invest from vaccination is very high. It's about $1 to $77 return. And also, again, it was estimated by 2030, about 24 million people will be prevented from falling into poverty. Next slide, please. So global society have developed the specific goals and targets by 2030 to tackle different diseases by use of tool of immunization. Due to the time, I'm not going to the details, but as you can see, we have the polio, we have the tetanus, we have measles, etc. So we all just have a specific elimination, eradication tours by 2030. Next slide, please. This is also showing vector-borne diseases like Japanese encephalitis and other yellow fever, etc. Next slide, please. In general, when we are talking about achieving the goal for immunization agenda by 2030, there are strategic priorities to focus on, including the fundamental priorities, including the delivery of immunizations and some enabling environment. So, for example, we need to really emphasize the role of primary health care through the universal health service, healthcare service coverage and communities, etc. And also to think about how do we sustain the supply of vaccines and in the future, and enhance the capacity for research and development. Next slide, please. The core principles again that to support countries is on the program to support their programs addressing the needs and to addressing the needs and the social preferences, to develop national strategies and plans for sustainability, and emphasize partnership, data, evidence, best practice, etc. Next slide, please. I'm going fast because of time, but happy to come back for questions. Again, overall, sorry, can you come back? Yeah, overall, the return to immunization is pretty high. Estimated about $1 spent on immunization will eventually result in $54 return on investment. Next slide, please. So what is the future look like? So basically, the global vaccine market overview, it was estimated again from now to 2028, the market itself will most likely to double. This is not only about COVID-19 vaccine, but overall different vaccines. And especially we also have to acknowledge what are the barriers. For example, the high cost of newly R&D vaccines will become a barrier for low-income countries, etc. But also understand that there are some technology pathways such as the recombinant technologies will be the best one to adopt for the future. Next slide, please. Here is some rationales what the MDB, Multilateral Development Bank, such as ADB, should focus on, could focus on. What is the rationale for us to support vaccine manufacturing? Again, our development member countries in Asia is increasing their income is increasing. So a lot of them will eventually graduate from the least developed country team, so that the Gavi's subsidy will be phased out. And also there is a huge demand to protect people's health for vaccination and to ensure biosecurity and how to manage all these demands to tackle antimicrobial resistance, etc. Next slide, please. Here, it's basically its approach, basically talking about what is the best way for a developing country to focus on the technology. As we all heard about these terms during the COVID period, there are three major approaches to make a vaccine. Those are the inactivated vaccine technology. Those are the recombinant protein subunits, as well as the mRNA or DNA. Here, we really recommend the middle one for different reasons. For the recombinant conjugate technology, because this one has a fairly well-established regulatory procedures. And many of these vaccines have proven technologies more mature. It's less complex compared to the other two approaches. The know-how of developing new vaccines or technology transfer, fill and finish will be relatively easily available. Raw materials, required skill, human resources are more available. The requirement for biosafety level, the BSL is 2, only needed. Next slide, please. So we recommend this. Here is it's a scenario we've done in some Southeast Asian country and the South Asian countries to look at. Can you continue? Yeah, the slides will show. Yeah. So basically, when we are talking about supporting a country to develop the vaccines, we need to start. We normally start with the scenario analysis. So a country's to support a country's national immunization program, what do we produce? So, for example, a baseline scenario will be for 7 vaccines. 7 different type of vaccines are on the national immunization programs list, and we can start with 4 of them, which will account for 70% of the total volume. Or if we can also add HPV and RVV vaccines, which will make it 5 type of the additional vaccines. Or if we can also add another JE and the TCV, the Japanese cephalitis, to become 7. So all this are sort of like based on the technology logics, how this can produce and scale up. Next slide, please. Here's a example that when we are going to a country, we also do this bottlenecks analysis and to offer mitigation measures. Here, there are different areas of bottlenecks that have been identified in a country, DMC, but really we want to emphasize here is the regulatory compliance. So this is the note. For MDB like ADB to support on the vaccine manufacturing, it's not only just on the capacity of manufacturing itself, but also we need to address the medicine regulatory system and how the system can work to inspect to support the whole the manufacturing and ensure quality. Next slide, please. This is another example of detailed strengths, weakness, opportunity, and the threat analysis on how do we do that. Again, I will skip some details, but yeah, happy to give more details later. Next slide, please. Just as I mentioned about this regulatory status and the roadmaps to support a country to develop, such as Indonesia or Bangladesh in Southeast Asia or South Asia of ADB. We start also with something the World Health Organization has developed called the Global Benchmarking Tours. The GBT has basically 9 parameters, very comprehensive, talking about the national regulatory system, the registry and the marketing authorization, vigilance, market surveillance and control, licensing, inspection, laboratory testing, clinical trial oversight, and the law release for production, etc. So we would need to support the country on all the different fronts to enhance their capacity. Next slide, please. Just an example. So basically, currently, 2 of the countries that we are starting this business on the vaccine manufacturing is the Southeast Asian country, Indonesia. So currently is at the maturity against, again, measured by the global benchmarking tours. It's reached the level of maturity level 3. But the other one, which is Bangladesh in South Asia, is currently assessed at a maturity level 2. So in order for them to produce vaccines and also to supply in the future, not only domestically, but also abroad to other developing countries, they would need to really enhance their maturity level of their national regulatory capacity so that they will be able to reach the WHO pre-qualification. Here, this is a list of the current WHO pre-qualification manufacturers. Because for a new country, for a new developing member country, one of the ways to quickly enhance is to do technology transfer. So we can see most of this pre-qualified manufacturers are concentrated in a few countries, such as India. We also have the very famous Sanofi of France, of course, Bulgaria, South Korea, in China, in Denmark, UK, etc. And eventually, we would like to, and also, of course, Pfizer, US, United States, and eventually, we would like to, promote these collaborations of the PQ manufacturers with the future ones, so that they can also produce vaccines to that level. Next slide, please. So some of this investment type of opportunities we are talking about to support country to also enhance the national regulatory system in different areas for investments, such as laboratory building, such as establishing the testing facilities for vaccines, biosimilar drugs, medicines, etc., diagnostics, and the equipment and the human resources. Post-marketing surveillance, focusing on the cold chains management and for vaccine sampling, and then also to build a construction, for manufacturing, IT infrastructure, and also in a longer run, capacity building through the training centers, through some courses at international level, and also again promote this collaboration between countries for this higher maturity level national regulatory agencies to support and help the developing member countries. Next slide, please. This is a example for Bangladesh, which is basically when we are looking at this 9 perimeters, we look at how many of them, the sub indicators, have been implemented. Again, against this achievement, the status are assessed as different levels. So we will need to ensure that all the bottlenecks are addressed, so that the overall level of maturity can be attained. So this is pretty much the end of my vaccination introduction. We also actually prepared for some slides to introduce you the private sector, and some future outlook of a health portfolio from ADB. I think it's not on this version of the PPT, but we can share with you afterwards. Thank you very much.
Well, Ray, if I may, I think we were able to get the final version of your PowerPoint. So if Florent, you could go on to the next slide. Let me know if this is what you were referring to. Yes, I think
okay, thank you.
So
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So now it's just a kind of like a switching topics a little bit. Just give you a overview on what are the potential. I mean, what are the planned focus on private sector and the health sector reforms for ADB in different countries. We give you examples about the reform, supporting the reform of Indian in Philippines, in Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam, especially as earlier this opening remarks said, to address the NCD issue, address the elderly care, and also my colleague later, Irene, will also talk about the different innovations through digital technologies, etc., on how do we do that. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is a quick outline. So some of them have been just reached already, as earlier mentioned. So we still have some new projects in the pipeline, and hopefully we will be able to work with you and to tap into your expertise from France and work on these opportunities. Again, just back on this topic of vaccine manufacturing, France is such an advanced country, and we really welcome all this opportunity to collaborate with you. Please feel free to reach out to us for how can we support other developing member countries in Asia and the Pacific to enhance their vaccine manufacturing capacity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ray, for that detailed presentation. Continuing now with our next speaker, Mr. Aaron Dutta is a senior health specialist at ADB. He is a health economist who has worked extensively on health sector reform and health financing, especially on scale-up of health insurance schemes. Today, Mr. Dutta will talk to us about health infrastructure and innovative digital health solutions, and will give examples of ADB projects for this sector in the region. Aaron, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll try to be quite quick to give time for Michael. And there's a lot to discuss on urban sector groups investments. So if I can go to the next slide. So let's skip this slide. Just go to this one. I just wanted to update a few things that were mentioned by Rustam and also Anne Marshall. So where are we coming from? I think the last year was an amazing year for health in ADB. It was our largest year ever, where we were 30% of commitments. And this diagram here shows you that a lot of it was due to our vaccine financing under the Asia Pacific Vaccine Access Facility in blue. And we continue to do our regular health system strengthening work, though of course many projects were pushed back and will be actually coming a little bit later than we anticipated. So now let's look on the right. This is the current year and our best guess for how the year will close. So it's quite a large drop from where we were last year to where we are right now, less than $1 billion. And most of it is actually not related to vaccines or COVID-19. We are back to business as usual with health system strengthening taking front and center. A lot of projects that were delayed are now coming forward, and a lot of our member countries are bringing their sort of pending health system strengthening projects, investment projects, especially into secondary healthcare, back to the front burner. So next slide, please. So where are we going? In light of both the COVID-19 pandemic as well as our continuing needs in the health sector for system strengthening, for improving information technology, digitalization, we have been preparing a health sector directional guide, which will be coming out by the end of this year. And this slide just highlights a few of those key trends. So the Health Sector Direction Guide actually has been posted to our ADB website briefly for external review. And we got valuable inputs from our community. And so this reflects a year-long process to develop the vision. We're looking at some key trends, and this includes urbanization, demographic change, especially aging, decentralization. We saw a lot more regional cooperation during COVID-19. And of course, as I mentioned, digitalization of society, which impacts health. Where we will be focusing our attentions is in 4 main health domains. And these, not all of these lend themselves to financing projects. Some of them are really areas where ADB will deploy its technical assistance, resources, our ability to convene and create effective partnerships. So we have governance, which Ray covered, and then we have architecture, which is a general concept that includes infrastructure, systems, and supply chains. We have financing, including budget support, which we do a lot of through policy-based loans and other mechanisms. And then we are working in the health workforce, especially with our education colleagues. All of this, if we do it well over the next decade, will help us achieve universal health coverage in our region, or at least make more progress towards it. Some countries have very high insurance coverage, others are very still making progress towards that. So we will be hoping that as more people are covered by prepayment schemes or public access, we'll be able to improve quality and also patient-centeredness. Next slide, please. So let me jump into the area that I was asked to speak about. Usually we do present our pipeline as Ray was doing, but today is a little different. So we'll focus a little bit on a specific topic of infrastructure. So Ray's already covered pharmaceutical manufacturing as an example of where we can invest. But here is an area where I think French expertise may be relevant. And we actually had some very good presentations from French companies looking at medical waste. So we are investing heavily, or rather our DMCs are requiring us to invest in areas such as hospital and broad secondary health infrastructure, which includes teaching colleges, medical, advanced medical centers. And Marshall mentioned the Pakistan project. We are very proud of this. It was negotiated over time and has been now committed. It's focusing on a specific province which has relatively low availability of hospital care. So we'll be investing in modernizing infrastructure, building capacity among hospital staff and administrators, and then strengthening the supply chains for equipment and consumables going into those hospitals. This project in Thailand is in preparation. This is anticipated for next year. It's a $255 million project looking at tertiary hospitals, so more advanced facilities, and in 5 regions across Thailand. And in addition to the investments into the hospital infrastructure, for example, creating a new wing focusing on cancer, which I saw in one hospital, or creating a new NCDs clinic overall of multiple floors. We are also going to be installing or helping the government install green health infrastructure, so climate resilient, low carbon solutions, and then also building the capacity of staff. So across hospital and secondary healthcare infrastructure investments, what we're looking for, and I think what will be relevant opportunities working directly in those countries, will be green health infrastructure, especially firms that bring technologies related to green design, low carbon energy for hospitals, low carbon in such systems for getting rid of medical waste, and then improving overall hospital processes. We're also looking for information systems, whether it's EMRs or management information systems. Everything should be highly digitized. We're looking for sustainable medical waste on site, as well as generally biological waste disposal off site. And of course, as I mentioned, climate and disaster risk resilience for the hospital sector is extremely critical. As we may have said, ADB is planning to be the climate finance bank for Asia Pacific, and this is true in our health sector as well. Next slide. So this has already been comprehensively covered. Just to highlight a few opportunities that emerge in this space, we're looking for, of course, design and engineering firms doing feasibility as well as construction design, training systems, especially on mRNA and more advanced vaccine technologies, on-site quality control, prevention of contamination, biosafety levels, and Six Sigma processes. And then overall, as Ray mentioned, support to the regulators and also to the actual manufacturers in achieving those highly desirable WHO pre-qualifications. Next slide, please. So I'll end with a discussion a little bit on where we're going with ADB's digital focus. This is a big area of focus for the organization, not just in health, of course, or even in social sectors. We're going digital across all our major investment areas. But generally what we're looking to achieve are 3 major goals. One is a focus on the sovereign side, on improving government services with the use of digital technology. While the private sector has been leading already with the adoption of a lot of digital tech, including e-payments, using paperless technologies, the public sector has been lagging in quite a few of our member countries. We want to focus on installing and expanding the use of digital technology, and this really applies to the public health sector. So we also want to promote targeted investment in partnerships, and of course partnerships with French technology and French expertise will be very relevant. And ADB does deploy its trust funds to achieve some of these targeted investments, and I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in health. And finally, we are, of course, conscious of various regulatory issues that come up with the use of digital technology. Data privacy is already mentioned on the slide, but there's also more. And regulation can also be pro-business, pro-expansion, and we want to enable regulation that is risk-taking, while, of course, protecting the ultimate consumers. Next slide, please. So very quick focus on what we're doing in digital health, and I've picked two areas of potentially many. So the first one is the use of digital technologies to improve all aspects of financing in healthcare. This can include InsurTech, or technology for insurers. It can include digital payments for health assistance payments. It can also include various types of systems that automate the processing of claims, including artificial learning, etc. So we have a regional technical assistance project that is promoting this, and we're working in quite a few countries. And I want to highlight that next year, and this may be relevant to French expertise, we will be doing more procurement around this, and including an innovation challenge for those with innovative technologies in digital financing or digital payments. The second area that I want to highlight is electronic health records and e-health in general. We have several investments in many countries. I'm just showing you Laos as one country where we're doing a fairly extensive support to government. For example, this includes implementing an electronic medical records, creating a new national digital health ID, a unique ID that could link to civil registration vital statistics systems, as well as to an existing Lao national ID. And I just wanted to say, as a passing aside, that we're working with a French consultant here, and he has been very good. Next slide, please. That's it. And I hope we give enough time to Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aaron. Very exciting opportunities ahead in the health sector group. Thank you very much again for that presentation. Now, bearing in mind that the improvement of the region's population and health infrastructure cannot be independent from the development of efficient essential services, we transition now to opportunities in the urban and water sectors for Southeast Asia. Our next speaker is Mr. Michael White, Senior Urban Development Specialist with expertise in water supply and sanitation, Southeast Asia Department, ADBs. Mr. White is a civil environmental engineer with 35 years of professional experience in the water and urban development sectors. From 2011 to 2018, Mr. White was responsible for the developing of ADB's rural and urban water supply sanitation portfolio in Cambodia, in addition to administering similar projects across the region. So he now heads the project administration and technical teams for the development and implementation of water supply, sanitation, solid waste, and urban development projects across Southeast Asia. Over to you, Michael. Thank you for joining us today.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. Sorry, I came back from Philippines with a bit of a cold, so apologies for that.
No worries.
Okay, so firstly, bonjour and good morning to those on French time, and good afternoon to those who are on Manila time. I'm in Indonesia myself, so I'm about an hour behind Manila. Okay, so what I wanted to focus on today is really the business opportunities in the urban and water sectors, which are very much linked to what my colleagues have been talking about on the health side, but much more towards the governance and also at the hard infrastructure that supports that. So first slide, please. Yeah, just first looking at ADB operations, really at the moment we're really guided by ADB Strategy 2030, which I'm sure many of you have read and are familiar with, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But some of the important things from that is the Sustainable Development Goals. Of course, we're aiming for 2030. Inclusivity is an extremely important part of our work in this decade. Climate change, as we know, we've all been subject to this throughout the past few years, and this year in particular has been a very noticeable around the world, and that includes mitigation, adaptation, and of course climate resilience. Innovation, that's another big part of Strategy 2030. Although we're dealing with primarily with infrastructure, we need to have some innovations there. And that's where we're looking at the likes of livable cities and smart cities. And the smart cities component, again, as my colleagues have mentioned, there's links in there where we could, you know, potentially combine things with health, as well as like water utilities and the like, who are moving on into more smart technologies for the likes of their billing, etc., and local government for their services. Another important area of Strategy 2030 is the private sector. We are still predominantly a sovereign lending bank. I mean, we do need to increase our private sector exposure. That would also allow us to leverage both sovereign and non-sovereign lending modalities to essentially expand our impact and our ability to assist much further than we can do alone. And we do have a lot of things that are developing in this area. And the other thing, which probably my colleague will speak to after me, Stefan, is by improved project readiness and procurement. Another area where we need to bring in improvements to what we do in terms of operations to speed things up. So, well, in terms of financing instruments, I think most people are familiar with the technical assistance, which is really there to provide, you know, a support, soft support without infrastructure, and also for the development and of projects. And this is basically provided to governments free of charge from the bank. But our sources come from not just the bank, from other generous sources who provide funds for us to utilize. Grants, again. Grants and loans that are administered by both the partially by ADB, but essentially they're in the hands of the developing member countries, our executing agencies. And you know, finally, private sector. This is an area which is developing. We have we see our countries developing and graduating into, you know, middle-income countries, upper middle-income countries. We see the development of their private sector and the regional private sector needs to be brought in to support the development of water and sanitation, etc., around the region. And finally, what is an important component of all of our projects is safeguards, environmental safeguards, social safeguards. And whilst not a safeguard in itself, in ADB terms, gender equity is a very important component of our projects, so that we can really mobilize as much human capital as we possibly can to improve the economics of each country. And next slide, please. So in Southeast Asia, urban and water, what do we typically do? And I can break that down really into three components. One is, as you would expect, infrastructure, and that's really inclusive, resilient infrastructure and services. Important that we're bringing in services now and not just infrastructure, because the infrastructure, especially in the urban and water sector, needs a good service to make that sustainable. And typically you would see what type of projects do we do, what components, water supply, both urban and rural. Sewerage and sanitation, again, in the urban and rural sectors. That includes citywide inclusive sanitation, on-site sanitation and off-site sanitation. So it's we're trying to bring a holistic approach to sanitation, which in the past hasn't been done often so well. Another component is urban roads and drainage. Often we talk about roads, but in an urban environment, roads and drainage go together. You can't really have one without the other. More sort of main drainage and flood protection. Solid waste management. Again, there's improvements in solid waste management are really necessary, and you know, this is another link with the health sector and how do we dispose of medical wastes and other special wastes in a safe manner. And then we have urban improvements and tourism development. These are going to be any number of different things that can improve an urban environment. It can be, you know, whether it's to do with transport, whether it's to do with, excuse me, it's to do with public markets, etc., etc. But a big focus more recently is in tourism development, and we see that there's going to be more focus on this area, particularly post-pandemic, where a lot of our countries in Southeast Asia have been hit very, very hard by COVID, and are just starting to recover. So this is an area we're trying to and not just have an add-on, but actually build projects from this. The other is institutional development, of course, and that's generally capacity assessment and capacity building, master planning and urban land management. This is an area where we've tried to focus on a lot more recently, in recent years, because the problem we're facing is we plan projects, and while we're planning projects, the land's been used for something else. And so you constantly had a moving target. So we're working with both national and provincial governments to come up with better land use plans, so that we actually have land for our facilities to be built in the future. Institutional and sector reform. Whilst this the operation of everything and the good governance is all very important, we've been doing that for many years, I think the main objective now is financial sustainability. How do we make all of these things work into the future and make them sustainable from a financial perspective? This is a particular problem, not necessarily for water supply, but for the likes of sewerage and sanitation and solid waste management, where fees are either non-existent or typically low, but the costs can be high. And then finally, we're looking into, you know, much more work with the private sector. So every time we look at a new project, we look at, you know, identification of private sector opportunities and financing, and also that the fact that it really must complement, you know, sovereign investments that most of our ADB's financing is supporting, as well as standalone non-sovereign initiatives. It's still a little bit early days, but we do have some successes here recently in Vietnam. And we're also looking at things currently in Thailand and Malaysia. Next slide, please. So behind all of that, what does all that lead to? It really leads to what's our lending program, because this is where the work is for, I suppose, consultants, individual consultants, and also for contractors and other suppliers such as equipment, etc. So as you can see, if you look at our lending program from 2022 to 2025, you see 22 was a little bit lean, and because a couple of our projects have been pushed into 2023, so you've seen an increase in the projects there. This is more so in the Philippines. We have national elections, and so this year, so things have been pushed into 2023 and are set to move fairly quickly next year. But as I mentioned earlier, we've got 6 countries here, but with the likes of Thailand and Malaysia, we are looking at potential private sector initiatives there with our private sector group, and also Office of public-private financing. So there's a lot of detail on here, and as you can see, we split it into two components. One is environmental sustainability and water resilience. So, but that's really just an internal breakdown of the types of project and where we put them. So what I'll do now is go through each country in a little bit more detail on each project to give you a flavour of what we're doing. So next slide, please. Okay, Cambodia. Livable Cities Investment Project. This is scheduled for 2024, and this is actually a phase 2 of a project which was just started earlier this year. We're looking at about $80 million, and the focus there is on strengthening urban and sector planning. As I mentioned earlier, this is a big problem for us, with the goalposts keep changing even during the design of the project, especially with respect to land issues. And efficient and sustainable service delivery, delivering institutional capacity and critical urban infrastructure. So all of those three things are all linked together: the infrastructure, the governance, and the service delivery, and of course the financial sustainability of those. So but for that, it's planned for 2024, and the cities involved, we're still looking at confirming them with the government. Again, in Cambodia, we have the Rural Water Supply, Sanitation and Hygiene Sector Development Project, again scheduled for 2024. This is about $70 million. But this is actually the fourth project supporting rural water supply and sanitation and hygiene since ADB has been involved since 2006 on a continuous basis. So this is basically as the project's really been evolving from 2006. This is now the fourth project, and there's a big focus now post COVID on the hygiene and health. So again, on this, there's a heavy focus on infrastructure, which is basically rehabilitate, construct rural water supply facilities in participating villages. I imagine that we're probably looking at around 400 to 500 villages for this project. Construct sanitation facilities, that goes hand in hand with our work on the water supply. Behavior change is an important component of that to make hygiene work. This is especially important in rural areas where often people are getting toilets and water supply often for the first time, at least to any good standard. And then of course continuation of our reforms and with respect to excuse me, respect to decentralization of down to the provincial level and commune levels. Next slide, please. In Indonesia, we only have one project which is in the making for Indonesia in our sector up until 2024-25, and this is basically the citywide inclusive sanitation project. Now, while this is involves the construction of wastewater treatment plants and sewer networks and household connections in two locations, this is linked to, the reason we said citywide is it's linked to other initiatives that the government has been initiating itself with other development partners and with the local governments. So overall, there has been a holistic approach, of which ADB's component are is the sanitation components, and in particular wastewater treatment, fecal sludge management, and also support for the water utilities, the PDAMs, in preparing operational asset management and maintenance plans, and generally to support corporate governance and improve operational performance. So next slide, please. In Laos, we have two projects in the pipeline, one for 2023, one for 2024. The first is a water supply sector project. This is again a project we've been working probably for more than a decade on water supply sector projects in Laos, and this is really the next phase of that, and basically looking to continue our support to expand water supply coverage across the country in numerous towns. Of significant interest there would be the corporate business plans, with obviously tariff roadmaps and training programs for the water supply department, Outside of the capital, its capacity is still quite low, so we have to be very hands-on. The second project is an urban environmental improvement investment project. And this again looks at the other side of the water supply side, where we're supporting urban environmental improvements through solid waste management, fecal sludge management, and urban streetscape upgrading. Whilst the streetscape upgrading is a little bit on the smaller side, it's really something that links in to our tourism components, because a lot of towns in Laos are quite dependent on tourism, and they've been hit very hard by COVID. So again, adding in to our urban projects that tourism component. As you'll see, our first phase here is for Luang Prabang, which is probably which used to be the old capital of Laos, but is now a famous tourism spot in the north of Laos. Next slide, please. Philippines. These are where we've tried to have a tourism aspect to water supply and sanitation. And this has been backed a lot by the government, and where we're trying to build on existing tourist sites to improve the urban environment and make them more appealing, I suppose, to tourists, and both international and national alike. So we're looking here at two places. At Coron and El Nido, and you can see it's the usual to have a look at water supply, sanitation, septic management, and drainage improvements, plus some tourism, boat pontoons, etc. I'll try and hurry up a little bit. And then in Baguio, again, we're looking at wastewater treatment, rehabilitation of sewer networks, etc., etc. Next slide, please. Vietnam. I think this is my final slide. Oh no, we'll have one after this. And that you see here, we have 5 projects ongoing. We have for 2022, 24, 23, 24, and 24. And again, we're looking at waste management, wastewater and sanitation, and drainage, and that's really is the backbone of most of our projects in Vietnam. Of course, we can request more information on these separately, but this just gives you a flavour of we're expanding our operations in Vietnam once again. And then finally, next slide, please. And Timor-Leste. We have the Dili West Water Supply Project. This is in Dili, and Wellbank's doing the east side of the city, and we are doing the west side. And so that is due for approval any minute, I think, this year. So, and that's 127 million, and construct and enhance the water supply facilities and the operational capacity of B Timor-Leste, which is the new utility which is formed to look after this. And then finally, looking ahead into 2025, we have the Climate Resilient New City project and Water Supply and Sanitation Investment project, for which the scope is still being determined. So, and you can see by the date 2025, there's still a fair way to go on that. That's it, thank you. But here's my details if anyone needs to contact me on any of those projects at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Interesting opportunities for French firms, definitely in your sectors. Thank you once again for your presentation. So to wrap up our ADB presentations for today, let us welcome our final speaker, Mr. Stéphane Bessadi, Senior Procurement Specialist with the Procurement, Portfolio and Financial Management Department at ADB. So Stéphane strategically supports infrastructure project design and procurement in East Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific, focusing on resilience, operations and maintenance, and low carbon technologies. So he also leads on innovative water and wastewater practices and technologies from the water service industry. He is with us today to give us a general presentation of ADB's procurement system and to show you the different ways you can work with ADB. Take it away, Stéphane.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you very much to all my colleagues. So I will really go right to the point in my presentation. I propose to skip all the parts that are related to ADB general framework, because it was really very well explained by my colleagues from the health and the urban sector, and also introduced by Anne and by Rustam. So maybe voilà, we can show quickly the next slide. Yeah, please. You can skip. Yes, okay. Just yeah, you can go ahead. You can go ahead. Okay, maybe you can stop on this one. Sorry, the previous one. Yeah, thank you. Just in line with what was shown, just to show you, you have this report. You can find it on the website, on ADB general website, and you can find by sector what was said or what was introduced before by my colleagues, and you can see that the health sector in 2021 also is really increasing, and is now one of the largest sector of ADB for the coming year. You can see also on the right the projects that are in line with the ADB strategy 2030 and the 7 operational priorities. So you can see also how it's addressing these priorities. Next slide, please. Yeah, next one. Okay, Joe, quickly on this one, and very practically for you, consultant or contractor who are working with us, and we really engage you to do more and more because you understand that we need your innovation and your ideas for the challenging programs. So the key message I want to highlight here, that very often we think that you can work at only when the project and when the bid, so when the project is completely formalized and when the bid is being at award stage, at bidding stage and award stage. But in fact, you can really engage in ADB project much before. So you can see that there is first a country partnership strategy that is being prepared with the country. After we do a concept paper for the project, a preparation of the different studies to be done for the project, and then we have an approval and an implementation and an evaluation. And all this cycle may take between 3 to 5 years, so it's very long cycle, but it means that you can really start to engage with ADB at country partnership strategy stage, if you are an individual consultant or even if you are a consulting firm, and start to give your expertise, provide your expertise on the different project preparation. Next slide, please. You have the key type of opportunities, but again, I will go quickly on that. So you see that the key types of opportunities are goods, works, and consulting and non-consulting services. Next slide, please, Anna. And you can find all these details again on our ADB report. So we have a specific annual procurement report that we are now preparing every year, where you can see the very large range, so about 7,000 contracts that we are awarding every year for about 10 billion of USD. So you can see the very large range of contract. Next slide, please. As it was said, so we can see on this slide that the health sector is a growing sector, and in parallel of the traditional transport and energy sector and water and urban, health sector is really taking a large part. Next slide, please. You can see so the top suppliers by member states, so for goods, works, and consulting service. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide, please. Voilà. And just a quick stop on the procurement statistic for France. So it's a new report. It's just a few weeks ago. Our team has prepared this report where you can see for France some very interesting details. So for example, for the 2022 procurement highlights, so France is ranking at the 19th rank, so the year is not yet finished, but it gives you an idea. And 17 contracts have been awarded so far. So of course we have to be very positive. It's very good, but there is also a large room for improvement. So this is why your expertise and your interest in ADB project is much required. Next slide, please. So well, you can see also here other details of the overall share and the value of contract by DMC. Just a quick word on that. You can see that Vietnam, as was explained by Mark, is having a large share of contract, but you have also a quite good repartition, knowing that Southeast Asia is a region of interest for French companies. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, please, next slide. Voilà, just a quick overview on this. So we have since 2017 an updated procurement framework that is giving more flexibility and more reactivity also in our process. And this procurement framework is always evolving, as I will show you in a few seconds, regarding consultant selection, for instance. Next slide, please. So we have two key principles that have been added to the four existing ones that are quality and value for money. So this is a comment that we are hearing very often from development banks, that we are only using low-cost bidding process and low-cost criteria when evaluating bid. But this is really changing, and this is we are really introducing quality components in a lot of bidding process, and in order to give and to provide to our countries and to the project the highest value for money possible. So again, well, cost is one of the components that we are evaluating in the bidding process. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. So just to remind what is our role in the sovereign procurement. Of course, when you are bidding as a company, as a contractor, you will have a direct link, a direct contract with the executing agency. But we will, of course, be here to review, oversight the loan process, the contract process. And very importantly, I want to highlight that we are following up, we are accompanying the government and the agency up to the contract implementation stage. So contract implementation is very important for us. We have very strong expertise and very strong expert in that in PPFD, and this is really something we are accompanying the project up to its end. Next slide. You can see here the different method of selection. So QCBS is the preferred method of evaluation and selection, and it means that we are really privileging competition amongst companies and contractors. Next slide, please. Alors, a few words here. As I said, we are always trying to be better every year. So we have developed a new selection method for firms in order to speed up the recruitment time, especially for consultant and consultant firms. Next slide, please. Yeah, you can you can press. You can see here the traditional step. Yeah, you can stop here. Thank you, Anna. So you can see, no, yeah, thank you. So you can see on the top of the slide the traditional method that was and the different steps in order to select a firm and or an individual consultant. And we can see in the bottom of the screen that this step has been reduced and it has been accelerated. So now it's still at pilot stage, but it means that if you apply to ADB bids, it will be even quicker than before for you to get awarded or not your contract. Next slide, please. Next slide. Voilà, this is where, if I can take 2-3 minutes, Anna, I hope we still have the time. This is where I wanted to go, as I said, to try to be practical today. Really, we are very, we put a lot of attention when we do, when we evaluate a consultant or a consulting firm or a contractor on the local knowledge of the project from the bidder. So it's very important, as said Rustam, for instance, that you can now engage with local partners, maybe to have some local competitive advantage. So it's very, very important, but also show to ADB and to, more importantly, to our EA, to the final client, that you understand well the project, that you understand well the context, and that you are really adding value and not only duplicating a standard approach that has been used in the different countries, that you are really what we call the fit for purpose, so that you are really bringing a fit for purpose proposal to the project. Also, it's a process, so it means that you have also to exchange with a project officer. So as you saw before, we are very competent people who are happy to exchange and to give information. Of course, it will be done in a fair process and it will be shared with all the bidders, but it means that ADB project officer are more than happy to engage and to exchange with the EA and with the market to define a project, as I said, and of course to implement a project. So express interest, you are really invited for that, but also prepare a strong technical proposal and seek clarification if there is something that is not clear. Next slide, please. You can see here the common mistakes that are done in preparing bids. So I will not detail it one by one, but it means that we want to show you this because it means that it happens. So it's really something you have to put a lot of care and attention. Incomplete bids, for instance, and insufficient amount of bid security, conflict of interest not disclosed, some confusion between the financial and technical offers. So put also some attention on that. Next slide, please. Again, bon, the same idea. Be careful about these different steps that can cancel your bid. And again, don't hesitate if something is not clear to seek clarification with ADB, with the EA. And there are very clear ways in the bidding document where you can contact people. So don't hesitate to do that. Next slide, please. You can have a debriefing of if you have been unsuccessful in a bid, and this is also another message that we want to pass today. If you have been unsuccessful in one bid, don't be discouraged. It really happens, and it does not mean that you will never get a contract. So we really invite you to try to understand what was not relevant. So we do that very regularly. We do this debriefing to explain why the bid was not the preferred one. So don't hesitate to do that and to apply again and to try to improve your bidding process. And generally, it's a learning process, and after a few months, it's really improving your chances of success. We have also very clear process to report complaints or to report frauds. So again, don't hesitate also to use them. Next slide, please. Alors, few words to finish on finding information. So we have, I say it objectively, but a very, very well done website. You can really find a lot of information, so don't hesitate to use it. I will show you a little bit more details. Next slide, please. So you can go and work with us. You see there is a procurement outreach area where you can click. So you can find this on adb.org Business Center. Next slide, please. And voila, you can see, of course, the procurement plan. That is a key document in a project. It's really where you will see all the planned procurement items of the project. So either for consulting or either for contractor. But you can see also the pre-qualified contractor. You can see the contract awarded. You can see the bidding procedures. So it means that even if you have not been selected sometime on a project, you can also understand who has been the contractor selected, and maybe you can contact him to try to propose your expertise, and you can learn on a lot of opportunities that are available from ADB. Next slide, please. Voilà, you have here a very good example, so you can see all the project opportunities with all the details. So you can click on the left on the different button to select the country, to select the type of project, to select the date, and you can really find here all the ongoing opportunities. We try to be as transparent and visible as possible. Next slide, please. You can see, voilà, here you can register for some notification and alerts, so it makes it even more simple for you. Every week you can receive the different new alerts and new projects that are being published by ADB. Next slide, please. To finish, few links. So as said, Rustam, we try to be as active as possible on disseminating opportunities. We have about one event per week in average, so it's quite important. You can see us on LinkedIn. You can find a lot of information on the ongoing opportunities. So if it's not yet done, you can register today to our LinkedIn website. And again, don't hesitate, as proposed Mike and the other speakers, don't hesitate to contact us for any more details. We will be more than happy to provide you guidance. Thank you very much for your attention, and we welcome any questions. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I asked the indulgence of our participants just for a few minutes longer. I know that we're a little over time, but just allow me to explain to you a little bit the business support that we at Business France can provide to our French firms at ADB, and then we'll wrap up as scheduled. So to wrap up today's presentations, let me just introduce myself again for those of you with whom I have not yet been in contact. So my name is Anna Austria-Lumé. I am commercial liaison to the Asian Development Bank for Business France. As with the ADB headquarters, I am based here in Manila at the offices of the French Embassy here in Makati. Next slide, please. So just to present very briefly, since 2016, Business France has designed a dedicated liaison officer. So with myself in this position since January of 2019, really with the main mission of increasing the visibility and participation of the French private sector with regards to ADB operations. So the idea is to really provide French companies who are interested in working with the bank with additional support through providing assistance, technical know-how, business matchmaking, and project identification in order to help build your ADB network and become an important development partner. Next slide, please. So We are conscious of the fact that the different French firms that get in touch with us have varying prior knowledge and history with ADB. We take this into consideration, as well as their corresponding priorities with regards to experience, expertise, and target countries and or regions of development in defining a tailor-made plan of action. So its implementation and timeline are also therefore to be adjusted according to your specifications. Next slide, please. So the type of actions Mrs. France can provide to those seeking our support are illustrated in, but not limited to, the following examples. So we can provide you with project intelligence, due diligence work, organizing missions, helping you find and make strategic partnerships, and planning your participation in other events with the main objective of contributing to your image building at ADB. So these actions can take the form of either individual missions, or it can be integrated into a series of activities to be incorporated into a long-term business support plan. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned in the beginning, and as stated in the sign-up form that you filled up in order to participate in today's BOS, do reach out if you need more information. Together with my colleague Nathalie Issa, who is based in our headquarters in Paris, we are at your disposal, we are at your service, and we can be contacted through the following contact information. So please also bear in mind that should your international development projects require further information and contact with the local markets in Southeast Asia, we would also be more than happy to facilitate introductions for you with our networks of Business France offices and Team France Export colleagues in the region. Thank you very much. So we were supposed to do a couple of minutes left for Q&A, but since we're already overboard 10 minutes, we don't want to keep our speakers any longer than scheduled. Rest assured that you can contact us directly. We have taken notes of the questions that were posted in our chat box today. What we'll do is that we'll centralize everything and send them to the speakers they were intended to. We will be providing access to the replay for today's presentations to all the registered speakers, as well as access to speaker presentations and the survey form. So I think, Florent, you can go ahead to our last slide so we can wrap up. So again, we apologize. We don't have time to address our questions verbally with regards to time constraints, but we do thank all of you again for your participation today. A special thank you once again to our distinguished speakers for their precious time and expertise. Ms. Anne Marshall, Ms. Camille Louillot, Mr. Rustam Abdukayumov, Mr. Ray Liu, Mr. Aaron Dutta, Mr. Stéphane Besadi. Many thanks as well for the support of our colleagues at the ADB BOF team, Apple, Clarice, Gigi, and Gerald, and the Business France Asiano team, especially to Mr. Florent Dutoit from our Jakarta office. Okay, so again, for those of you who expressed your wish to continue discussions with our ADB experts later on, we will also get in touch with you directly. So that's all the time we have for today, unfortunately. Thank you again to everybody. Until next time, hopefully in person, if we are to take our cue from Rustam's presentation at the beginning of today's VBOS. Maybe see you in Manila or in other DMC in person in 2023. Again, thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.